And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:07 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom did a press conference with Magic Johnson and the Dodgers to talk about all the philanthropic efforts to help people affected by the fires. And Gavin Newsom wanted people in Los Angeles to know that he comes from San Francisco, so he knows something about rebuilding.
I come from a city, San Francisco, whose flag has a phoenix on it. It's a flag, phoenix rising from the ashes of the 1906 earthquake. Mindful of the recovery, mindful of the resilience, mindful of our remarkable capacity for renewal and rebirth.
3 mindfuls.
Does he get paid every time he uses that word?
If he does, that explains how he can afford that house in Marin County.
Usually, if they're having a press conference at a baseball stadium about fire, it's because they signed a new closer.
That is something we are mindful of.
The catcher's putting down a 1. Give me the heater. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, one of the big subjects that's being talked about nationwide today, besides the confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services, or if you're Javier Baccaria, I guess it's Health and Education Services.
For Secretary of Health and Education Services, I nominated Javier Baccaria.
What's he doing now?
Apparently, he's going to come back home and run for governor.
Is there anybody that's not running for governor that definitely won't win?
In theory, he would be a viable candidate. He was an elected statewide constitutional office holder before he was plucked from obscurity and made a cabinet secretary. But I think you're right. I think he's going to get stomped all over.
I guarantee, even with working in the White House, nobody knows who he is.
No, he was a backbencher congressman for a long time before all that.
He's got about as much name ID as Tony Thurmond, the least of the recognizable Tonys of the 3 Tonys that are running.
Well, the other issue that's generating a lot of attention nationwide is the issue of immigration, as President Trump is fulfilling a campaign promise to deport illegal aliens who are not in the country legally. Part of the blowback from this is that blue states are declaring themselves to be sanctuary states. Blue cities are declaring themselves to be sanctuary cities, and they say they don't have to cooperate with the federal government if they don't want to. But here's the problem. In a federalist system, if you don't cooperate with the feds, you get stomped all over because federalism involves federal supremacy. The state of California is a sanctuary state. Rob Bonta and Gavin Newsom are very proud of that because they see themselves as the leaders of the resistance. But there are problems associated with being a sanctuary state, including being cut off from federal funds and being in violation of federal law. They may not care, but other officials in California do.
Including the district attorney in El Dorado County, who sent a letter to Rob Bonta asking him to clarify how exactly the state's sanctuary law, written by, of course, Kevin De Leon, needs to be applied, because basically he either has to choose to violate state law or violate federal law when it comes to people coming out of his jails that are in the country illegally.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
For more on this conundrum, we go to CBS Sacramento.
The El Dorado County District Attorney, closer to home, is publicly asking the state's top lawmaker for guidance on how to move forward with the new immigration enforcement.
Your reporter, Ashley.
Your first mistake is asking Rob Bonta a legal question.
Yeah, no kidding. What kind of attorney do you think he is?
One that uses a lot of platitudes and cliches.
Every type of leadership is about meeting the moment and rising to the occasion. And this is what's required. And so we're stepping up and getting it done.
If he's representing you in court, you're going to end up getting the chair.
Your reporter, Ashley Sharp, is with us in studio getting answers on this. Ashley.
Yeah, well, the California Values Act became state law in 2018.
Thanks, Kevin De Leon.
Boy, he's just full of all kinds of good news.
Quite frankly.
Yeah, well, the California Values Act became state law in 2018. That ensures that no state or local agency can help with federal immigration enforcement. However,
even if they're a gang member, even if they're, like we're dealing with in San Francisco, a fentanyl dealer, nope, can't turn those people over to ICE. Not allowed to. That's not California values.
You know, I've been paying attention to a lot of these people who have been deported. And you know the media is going to start playing the violins and try to make every single one of them look like the kid that fell in the well. But based on everything that I've seen and read, what they're essentially doing is they're going after the criminals. They're going after people who are either in jail or have had experience with the jails for one reason or another. And the rap sheets go on a mile long.
And I don't know how many people can, with a straight face, defend keeping those people here.
I don't even know what the argument is. Typically, I understand when I don't agree with someone the point that they're trying to make. But if you've got someone who's a murderer or a rapist or a gang member or has tattoos on their face, let's start with that, and you want to send them back to their country of origin because they're here illegally, what is the benefit of keeping that person here? What is the benefit of keeping some other country's criminals in the United States of America where they can prey on us? I don't get it.
It's really bizarre, but the people who advocate for these sanctuary policies are such absolutists, they won't make any kind of exceptions, including, you remember what happened last year when San Francisco Supervisor Matt Dorsey wanted to modify the San Francisco sanctuary law to make it so if they catch an illegal alien dealing fentanyl, like all of the Honduran drug dealers that are in the Tenderloin that are known entities, that, okay, let's turn those people over to ICE because they're killing our citizens. He was called a racist.
Yes, and let me tell you something. In politics, if you take the most extreme part of your position and you make that the debate, if that's what the debate is over, you've already lost.
under new DOJ guidelines, the Trump administration requires strict compliance, leaving local law enforcement with a difficult decision. Do I violate state law or federal law?
Violate the state law.
Yes, because they're wrong.
Well, and police agencies, district attorneys' offices, they all live on a whole bunch of federal funding. And that federal funding get cut off immediately if you don't apply with these federal laws that are finally being enforced.
And Trump means business. If you think you're just going to be openly defiant and he's going to still make it rain, you got another thing coming.
If there's two people that you could potentially piss off, Bonta and Trump, which one do you think is the paper tiger?
I think we all know the answer to that.
To go big and to go strong.
Because Rob Bonta having to defend not wanting to turn over a drug dealer would be fascinating television.
California state law contradicting federal law as the Trump administration cracks down on illegal immigration.
And so we're essentially put in a catch-22.
Vern Pearson is district attorney of El Dorado County.
Is it law that when you live in a place like El Dorado, you have to have the name Vern?
It reminds me of those Ernest commercials. Remember those?
Oh, yeah, Vern.
And so we're essentially put in a catch-22.
Vern Pearson is district attorney of El Dorado County. He sent a letter to California's Attorney General asking for clear direction and clarification on a state law that Pearson says leaves unresolved issues for local law enforcement statewide.
How do I comply with your state law that flagrantly violates federal law?
How is that even allowed by the courts?
Well, it was challenged once and it was upheld.
Imagine if Utah just suddenly decided, you know what? We're not going to be compliant with anything the EPA says because we don't like what the EPA is doing. So the EPA, you're not welcome here in Utah. 0% chance the courts would allow that. Zero.
AG Rob Bonta recently said this.
We want to focus on enforcing the criminal laws of the state of California, arresting and prosecuting criminals, not be involved in civil immigration enforcement. So,
yeah, but how about the enforcement of criminal illegal aliens, like the ones that are in the jails?
He doesn't want to answer that question.
I think our roles are clear.
But Pearson's point is that it's not clear. He says, consider this scenario. In a state rocked by the fentanyl crisis, if a dealer or trafficker in the country illegally were arrested and released in El Dorado County, Pearson says his deputies cannot, under state law, help ICE or the federal government detain that person or provide any non-public information to the feds.
Can't even tell the feds where this person is, and they're free to go back to the drug dealing.
I would cut them off. I would cut them off of federal dollars. The moment they get cut off, they'll start taking a look at what they're doing and asking some questions.
If I was to notify...
Like, who are we protecting with being that specific on these broad sanctuary laws?
You think the people of El Dorado County want these people in the country?
If I was to notify ICE or the federal officials of that release, according to the author of SB 54, I should be criminally prosecuted for that.
Thanks, Kevin De Leon.
Boy, he's just full of good ideas.
It is hot as hell.
So for a law enforcement official to violate this state law because that state law violates federal law, state law says you can criminally prosecute the law enforcement official.
And this makes sense to them. This is good policy from their point of view.
According to the author of SB 54, I should be criminally prosecuted for that, notwithstanding the fact that I'm obligated under federal law to help with that. My people are as well.
Pearson acknowledges criminal...
It's a good old-fashioned legal paradox.
How can the courts allow this to happen? How could you have two laws that conflict with one another, both on the books?
Pearson acknowledges criminal prosecution of local law enforcement is only an interpretation of this state law. It's why he's
I would love to see Rob Bonta go ahead and file charges against a district attorney or a county sheriff for alerting ICE to a drug dealer or a pimp or somebody else that you really don't want here.
Oh, I'm sure he would, because that would first of all create publicity for him. Secondly, it would cement his reputation as being the leader of the resistance, and it would put him on the left of all of the candidates running for governor.
But do you really want the image of the resistance to be, we don't want to deport anybody, including drug dealers?
They think, and they might be right, I'm not sure, but they think that politically that's where Democratic voters are in California.
Not as much as them as there used to be. That position had the Democrats get their butts kicked.
Yes, but if you show up to one of these Democratic Party conventions or one of these central committees, wherever Democrats make decisions in terms of who's going to be endorsed by the party, who's going to be the anointed candidate, that's how those people think. That's how the delegates think. That's how many of the decision makers, many of the powerful unions, that's how they see the world.
It's why he's asking the Attorney General for definitive answers. As he also writes in his letter to Bonta, he worries local agencies in California could face devastating funding losses if deemed non-compliant.
So there is a very, very high likelihood that hundreds of millions of dollars are potentially going to be withheld by the federal government because of our insistence on adhering to the sanctuary state rule.
And that is something the federal government has never enforced when it comes to this sanctuary law, but it very well could now because police agencies get federal funding for being in compliance with certain standards. And you could definitely argue one of those standards is alerting immigration officials when you have a criminal illegal alien in your custody.
Sure, and this also hits two trigger points for the Trump administration. Enforcing the border, making sure that we have control over who is in the country and who leaves the country, that was one of the huge planks that he ran for president on. The other issue is with DOJ and other endeavors, they're looking to save money for the federal government. Well, if you're looking to save money for the federal government, than finding these local authorities, these local agencies that are not federally compliant, where you can ding them and you can cost them money and save money in the process. Well, that's something that's very attractive to them.
Look at you saying Doge with a straight face.
Now, this state law has been challenged in federal court before and was upheld, but Pearson believes the Trump administration could still strike it down in court. We reached out to...
I don't know what court upheld the sanctuary law, but I got to imagine that you can revisit that one because this doesn't make any sense, and you're putting local electeds like that DA in an impossible position.
Well, it's got to be some wacko judge that Gavin appointed or Jerry Brown appointed. It'll get overturned.
We reached out to Attorney General Bonta today for clarification, and we did not hear back.
Wait, Bonta, who will hop on a Zoom in his car to do any interview anytime anyone wants to talk to him, didn't want to respond to this story?
That's interesting to me. He must see some internal polling that shows that this is not a winner, or he's still trying to figure it out. Because normally he would be all over it.
Even in the state of California, where the vast majority of voters are Democrat, you also have a lot of independents, and you still have quite a lot of Republicans. This is not a popular position. I don't see how it is. It might be popular among the crazy electeds. It is not popular among the voters, as evidenced by the last election.
And again, even though California voted for Kamala Harris, California moved further to the right than any other state in the union compared to where we were in 2020.
Now, John, since the author of the California Values Act was mentioned multiple times by us during this story, I feel like it's one of the few opportunities we'll ever have again to do this.
All rise.
Madam President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Mr. De Leon, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning?
Thank you very much, Madam President. It'd be an honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Indivisible, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, I'm going to miss that clip.
Well, if this story stays in the news, which it will, because you know this law is getting challenged, there will be reasons in the future to bring up Kevin De Leon.
Quite frankly.
That is very true. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Greg writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com on Rob Bonta. Did he really say that they want to focus on enforcing laws and taking care of criminals? California does neither. You can remove the Ricky from California, and there's another... Oh, I can't say that. He's making a reference to the secret nickname that the members of the audience of this show created for George Gascon.
We got some wobbly knees allies.
You could remove the Ricky from California, and there's another blank to take his place.
Quite frankly.
I love this audience. And Randy, that nickname came from a remote that we did at Gelson's in West L.A. If you were to go back and listen to that particular episode, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcast.
Whoa.
Go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
Right.
You could
do a Google on YouTube.
Or get that handy-dandy KABC app.
Quite frankly.
Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store.
We got some wobbly knees allies.
It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcast that we did for 4 years on that jackass.
You can come up with data to support almost any argument.
Yes, you can.
And speaking of remotes, Randy, we're going on one next week.
Yeah, so if you got any more nicknames that you want to share with us that are not appropriate for air, come see us in Orange County. Johnny and I are heading to Orange County next Friday, February 7th. Come see us broadcast live from noon to 3 at Rove in Santa Ana. Rove Santa Ana is a full-service EV charging station with 40 ultra-fast EV chargers, a 24/7 lounge with restrooms and free Wi-Fi, a car wash, and a premium convenience store, Recharge by Gelson's. We're going to have free samples from vendors and barbecuing going on, so come hungry as we broadcast live. Rove and Recharge by Gelson's are located at 1008 East 17th Street in Santa Ana, off the 5 at the corner of East 17th in Lincoln. We'll see you live Friday the 7th.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
790 KABC welcomes the Totally Tubular Festival. There's no way to say that without doing that voice. I've tried it. It's impossible. It's totally tubular with Right Said Fred, Men Without Hats, The Motels, and many more. All coming to the YouTube Theater. That's that theater right next to SoFi, June 30th. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Very Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure of you.
Tubular.
If you're listening to us right now in Northern California, buckle up. A Pineapple Express and a parade of storms are going to slam Northern California over the next week, dropping huge amounts of precipitation and potentially causing significant flooding. Many forecast models drop over 20 inches of rain across the northern Sierra. So if you're in Northern California, you're going to get wet.
Well, now that spigot's open, will all that rain come down here?
I hope so. Only this time they should put some in the fire hydrants.
That would be nice.
All right. Well, we know that various fire agencies are still investigating the cause of the various fires that hit the state of California in recent weeks. So far, there hasn't been any conclusions that any fire agencies have given us for sure. However, it's looking increasingly likely that at least one of the fires was started by Southern California Edison.
That would be the Eaton fire in the Altadena-Pasadena area. And the reason more and more people are thinking that way, including the law firm that is suing SoCal Edison already, is a new video that was released that was taken from an Arco gas station nearby that showed one of those transmission towers sparking minutes before the fire started.
Let's have more on this.
Here's Fox 11.
Was the deadly Eaton fire...
It's Marla.
Was the deadly Eaton fire sparked by Southern California Edison's equipment? Some think so, and they claim the proof was caught on video. This is footage from a gas station security camera showing arcing, sparks falling, and then 10 minutes later, the entire hillside is ablaze. This isn't the only video out there. Fox 11's Haley Winslow, she's live in Pasadena with the new evidence being used against the utility company. Haley.
Marla, with experience litigating similar catastrophic wildfires that they blame on utility company neglect, they compared the Eaton fire to Groundhog Day, essentially doing the same thing, expecting different results.
I mean, this has happened before, not just with PG&E, but with SoCal Edison. The Woolsey fire, the Signal fire, this has happened before, so it's not totally out of left field.
Now, Randy, we played sound of the CEO of Edison who disputed these claims because this is something that's been percolating for a while now. And if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to get their point of view out there, because, again, nothing's been proven. But Edison is essentially not disputing that this happened, but they're challenging the timeline, correct?
They're challenging the timeline, and they said that they didn't see any disruptions in the transmission for that line. They de-energized the ones that go to the houses, but this is that higher line, the high-tension one. The problem is, after the CEO made that statement, then through discovery in this lawsuit, they had to reveal that there were faults in that transmission line near the time of the fire. Again, we still don't have a direct determination, but the evidence is starting to pile up. And outside of some direct evidence that this was a homeless encampment, there's really only a few ways these fires start. There was no lightning.
Does Barbara Ferrer believe the evidence is crystal clear?
The evidence is like crystal clear on that.
You think she's going to the Totally Tubular Festival?
Valley Girl Ferrer might.
I am sickened.
It's the voice for thousands who lost everything. LA Fire Justice, led by two tenacious attorneys and legendary consumer advocate Erin Brockovich.
They got Erin Brockovich.
Boy, she finds a way to attach herself to a lot of these things.
Well, I mean, her whole cause celeb was taking down PG&E back in the day when they were poisoning the water. And somehow PG&E still exists.
I thought her whole thing was being depicted by Julia Roberts.
Well, yes. But that movie was based on the trial that made her famous when she advocated for the people that PG&E poisoned with their water.
If I was a woman and Julia Roberts played me, that would be the first thing out of my mouth. And the second thing out of my mouth would be that I was a vegetarian.
Erin Brockovich.
I don't know if you've all been out to Altadena or down to Malibu or Palisades, but it is mind-boggling. I spent the first day out there crying.
With decades of experience litigating dozens of wildfires, they say their experts used cutting-edge technology.
I can't wait to see the cost of both of these fires as we see all the devastation that happened and compare that to how much it would have cost to underground all the power lines.
Oh, that is a story that we hear over and over and over again. But again, they're willing to roll the dice.
With decades of experience litigating dozens of wildfires, they say their experts used cutting-edge technology, including photogrammetry, a technique that uses photos to create 3D models, to reenact the Eaton fire.
This is like the guys on CSI. Zoom and enhance.
Reenact the Eaton fire, so it's like a skit on America's Most Wanted?
Yes.
Zero in on its ignition source and conclude the cause is clear.
And again, these are, attorneys alleging this. There still has not been an official cause. But at this point, it's a month later. Shouldn't we know by now?
We should.
They say the Eaton fire started from
But then again, we still don't know who set the 10 freeway on fire, and that was like 2 years ago.
Well, it's California. We still don't know who won the November election here.
They say the Eaton fire started from SoCal Edison's faulty transformer tower, specifically Tower Number 3.
A fault on transmission line number 3 is the location.
Tower number 3, so now they're all sounding like 9/11 truthers, huh?
Of the ignition of the Eaton fire. This is my 22nd wildfire. I've represented 21,000 fire survivors in 6 different states.
Yeah, he doesn't sound like he's from California.
No, he sounds like George W. Bush.
This is the clearest evidence that I've ever seen of utilities equipment being the start of a fire.
And, of course, what happens if SoCal Edison is responsible for this? Well, we can look back to the Camp Fire where PG&E was held criminally liable for killing 80 people and destroying an entire city in Paradise, California. They got bailed out by Gavin Newsom. They promised they'd start undergrounding power lines. They didn't, and then started raising the rates drastically. If the utility has to pay out the insurance companies because they're liable for this, they're just going to pass on the cost to us. So we lose either way.
And if you're the local politicians who are being blamed for this, including Karen Bass, you have every motivation in the world to blame Southern California Edison for the fires. Because if it's DWP, that's a municipal utility, and you're in control of that. If it's the homeless, my guess is that you've had many calls to bust up the encampment that started the fire. If it's an arsonist who should have been in prison for previous acts, and you voted for all of the soft on crime pieces of legislation that allowed someone like that to be out to start more fires, that's not a good look. Southern California Edison, if they're the ones that end up taking the blame for the origins of the fire, that's best case scenario for the politicians.
Of a fire.
Well, and again, this is only one fire, and the majority of the Palisades is not SoCal Edison. And what do we know from recent history? Oh, the Palisades got set on fire 3 years ago due to a homeless arsonist. So At some point, we'll find out the origin for all of these things, and Karen Bass is not likely to be off the hook.
Of a fire.
With plenty of warning with the Santa Ana winds, trial attorney Michael Watts says SoCal Edison should have better prepared with a proper public safety power shutoff, or PSPS.
We would say, why don't you shut the power off? Oh, the customers get upset because the ham goes bad.
I mean, the ham is cured. The pork might go bad.
We would say, why don't you shut the power off? Oh, the customers get upset because the ham goes bad. Well, the clients that I talk to says, I'd rather lose the ham than lose the house.
Okay, he wrote that. He wrote that, and he was so proud of himself when he said it in this presser. I'm so proud of it, too, so I'm going to play it one more time.
Oh, the customers get upset because the ham goes bad. Well, the clients that I talk to says, I'd rather lose the ham than lose the house.
The segment brought to you by Honey Bake.
But, of course, that's been the answer ever since the devastating Woolsey fire and the Signal fire and the Camp fire, is these power companies just shut off the power anytime it gets windy instead of, I don't know, undergrounding the damn power lines.
And by the way, not to change the subject, but if you live in an area that has above-ground power lines, the area looks tacky. If you go to a neighborhood that doesn't have above-ground power lines, my neighborhood, for example, doesn't have it. It's not allowed. So you know what I see when I look out my window? I see blue sky, I see mountains, I see palm trees, I see swimming pool. I don't see a bunch of wires that shouldn't be there. It's beautiful to see the Southern California landscape without a bunch of wires getting in the way. It's expensive, but it's worth it for a variety of reasons.
See, I look around my neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley, and I see a bunch of old rotted trees and a bunch of power lines that if they went down would torch the neighborhood. So I sleep real easy at night.
And so they could have done that. They did a partial PSPS. They just didn't do it on the side towards Altadena. So we'll have some questions about that.
Yeah, why wouldn't they shut off the entire power when you had 100-mile-an-hour winds?
It seems like a reasonable thing to do to me.
Southern California Edison's response?
So the video that we obtained from the New York Times on Saturday night needs more careful analysis. And
did they really need to have the attorney for SoCal Edison speak in front of a jackhammer?
Yeah, it sounds like it's Sarah Palin pardoning the turkey where there are turkeys over her shoulder being put in the wood chipper.
And it is very premature. I should say it is premature to comment or speculate on what that footage means without...
Well, it shows sparking from one of your towers around the same time the fire started.
I don't know if that's the start of the fire, but I can tell you this. It's not a good look.
Without more careful analysis.
Unless there was a meth lab under that tower that we don't know about, this is the clearest evidence we have. Again, determination not made, but it sure is looking that way.
And the fire in Pacific Palisades gets a lot of the attention because the pictures are dramatic and it's right there next to the coast. But what happened in Altadena was just as devastating. It was awful what happened there.
Brockovich says the Eaton wildfire devastation was preventable, and SoCal Edison should know better.
This is utilities' antiquated, failed infrastructure. Everybody in California, including the utilities, you know about the Santa Ana winds. This didn't have to happen.
She's not wrong.
But this is what we do with everything here. We do not spend money on infrastructure. Look at the condition of our freeways. Look at the condition of our water system. Look at the condition of many of our public schools and libraries and parks. We let everything go to hell here.
The videos from the public have been paramount in cross-referencing and backing up their conclusion. So if you have any videos from the Eaton or frankly, any of the other fires, they're asking you to please send them to their contact information, which is on their website. That's lafirejustice.com. Now, if you've been affected by one of these wildfires, they are holding town halls. First one is on February 7th. That'll be 30 days after the start of the fire. And then the next one is on Saturday, February 8th. They're going to talk about stuff like insurance claims and how to rebuild. And it's open, of course, to the public.
So there's the latest on the possible cause of the Eaton fire that devastated Altadena.
Not looking good for Southern California Edison. But we should note that there is no official conclusion from the investigation led by fire authorities. Just a video. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Matthew writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Am I the only one that thinks it's ironic that a gas station, which the climate change people contribute to massive fires, gasoline vehicles, caught the electric company, whose same climate change people claim to be the savior with electric cars and appliances, starting the massive fire, which caused massive amounts of pollution?
There you go. Funny how that works. All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. Former L.A. County Supervisor Don Knabe joins us. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.